This is PSN Newsrun, streaming exclusively on YouTube.
Hello and welcome to PSN Newsrun. Our top stories. Police deny live bullets use as NUJ condemns assault on journalist at Free Nnamdi Kanu protest. On the foreign scene, former French President Sarkozy sentenced to prison for corruption. And in sports, inside Nigeria's youth football crisis, Chief Operating Officer Nationwide League One, Mr. Olusola Gbenga, speaks on Under-17, Under-20 and Under-23 setbacks. The Nigerian police force has denied using live bullets to disperse the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest in Abuja, as the NUJ condemns the assault and arrest of journalists covering the demonstration. Here's Daniel with details.
The first public relations officer of the Nigerian police force has denied firing live bullets during Monday's protest, even as the Nigerian Union of Journalists, NUJ, condemned the assault and arrest of reporters covering the incident. CSP Benjamin Hundeyi, in a statement, dismissed reports that officers used live ammunition to disperse demonstrators, insisting that only tear gas and blank cartridges were deployed to maintain order. Hundeyi urged the public to disregard false narratives circulating on social media, assuring that the police acted within the confines of the law. However, the NUJ has strongly criticized the police over what it described as unprovoked attacks on journalists carrying out their constitutional duties during the protest. The union demanded an immediate apology, the release of all detained journalists, and replacement of damaged equipment. The NUJ further reminded security agencies of their obligation to protect press freedom, not suppress it, warning that any attempt to intimidate journalists will be met with nationwide resistance. The Free Nnamdi Kanu demonstrators, by supporters demanding the release of separatist leader Nnamdi Kanu, drew large crowds to parts of Abuja and other cities. Authorities moved to enforce court order limiting protest locations after some demonstrators attempted to approach sensitive government areas. Tensions rose as security forces sought to disperse crowds. Daniel Okejeme, PS News.
Nigeria's organized labor has handed the federal government a 4-week ultimatum to resolve the ongoing university crisis or face a nationwide strike. Miriam tells us more.
Nigerians' organized labor has issued a 4-week ultimatum to the federal government to resolve the lingering crisis in public universities or face nationwide industrial action. The Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) and the Trade Union Congress (TUC) made the declaration after an emergency joint meeting in Abuja, expressing concerns over the government's failure to implement agreements reached with university-based unions. According to the labor leaders, the continued strike and disruption in academic calendars have crippled the education system and deepened frustration among students and parents. NLC President Joe Ajaero said the union will mobilize workers across the country if government fails to act within the 4-week window, insisting that education must not be left to decay under this administration. The government on its part has appealed for calm, promising to engage all stakeholders to find a lasting solution. But with tension rising and academic unions threatening to resume protest, the coming weeks could determine whether the nation's campuses returns to stability or face another round of turmoil. As the countdown begins, all eyes are on Abuja, where the government's next move could either end the impasse or ignite yet another wave of national unrest. Mariana Wia, PS News.
The United Nations has raised alarm that about 2.5 million children in northern Nigeria face the risk of severe acute malnutrition due to rising food insecurity and conflict. Here's Ella with details.
The United Nations has warned that over 2.5 million children in the northern Nigeria are at risk of acute malnutrition as food insecurity and conflict worsens across the region. In its latest humanitarian report, the UN described the situation as alarming, noting that rising food prices, climate shocks, and persistent insecurity have severely disrupted livelihoods in states such as Borno, Yobe, Katsina, and Sokoto. The UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, said thousands of children could face life-threatening hunger in the coming months if urgent action is not taken. The agency is calling for increased funding to scale up nutrition interventions, access to clean water, and medical support for vulnerable communities. Officials warn that without immediate government and donor response, the crisis could escalate into one of the worst humanitarian emergencies in West Africa. As the lean season deepens, global attention is now on Nigeria's north, while millions of children's lives hang in the balance. Ella Okechukwu, PS News.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to prison after a Paris court found him guilty of corruption and influence peddling. Joycelyn is on the international desk.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to prison after being found guilty of corruption and influence peddling, a landmark ruling against the former French leader. A Paris court upheld Sarkozy's conviction for attempting to bribe a judge in exchange for confidential information about an investigation into his 2007 presidential campaign. The 69-year-old, who led France from 2007 to 2012, was handed a 3-year sentence with 1 year to be served behind bars and the rest suspended. The court also ruled that Sarkozy could serve the jail term under house arrest with an electronic tag, marking a dramatic fall from grace for one of France's most influential political figures. Sarkozy has continued to deny any wrongdoing and is expected to appeal the ruling, maintaining that the case is politically motivated. As the legal battles continues, Sarkozy's conviction underscores France's growing resolve to hold even its most powerful leaders accountable under the rule of law. Joycelyn, Ella Keche Ada, PS News.
Earlier today, our sports correspondent Samuel Agwen had a chat with the Chief Operating Officer Nationwide League One, Mr. Olusola Gbenga. He spoke on the fate of Nigeria's once feared youth football, how the under-17s failed to qualify for the AFCON and World Cup, the under-20s crash out, and the under-23s missing the Olympics for a second straight time, the first in the nation's history. Here's their chat.
Now, I don't need to tell you what is happening, but we have the raw materials in Nigeria. Why do we have coaches in Nigeria? The coaches need to do their job.
When you say the coaches need to do their job, it has to do with the Football Federation. It has to do with the proper environment for coaches to thrive. But we don't have that now.
No. I will say no. Nigeria Football Federation is just an administrative part of it. The NFF will not go to the field or go to scouting ground to go and pick players.
But they can set the path for
set
every other person to
Nigeria
follow.
Football Federation don't give players to coaches. They only tell the coach, you have been engaged for this job. Get us the best team that represents Nigeria. The only thing Nigeria Football Federation does through the technical department was to monitor what the coaches are doing. But then, the onus lie on the coach to pick the best player he believed will serve Nigeria better. So that is what we're experiencing now. The coaches are not doing their job. That is just the fact.
You can get to watch the full podcast on our YouTube channel. And with that sports report, we wrap up this episode. I am Oluwatosin Deba. Good evening.
You just watched PSN Newsrun, streaming exclusively on YouTube. This is your trusted voice for news that matters. Subscribe, like, share, and stay informed.